Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews. This one is particularly special for me because it's a story that I was invited to take part in. Mission 92 for Honor Flight Rochester. It happened this past weekend, and myself and our photojournalist, Emily Burkhart, we were asked if we wanted to go, and I don't think I said yes faster than anything in my life. So it was a remarkable experience. We're going to be talking about that trip and everything that Honor Flight is. And fortunately, I have two of my travel companions joining us right now. We've got John Peckham, our Mission 92 trip leader, and we have one of the veterans who came with us as well, Kathleen Ryan, a tactical field interrogator. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
All right. So before we get going on everything that the mission was, Kathleen, I'm just going to start with you. What did that entail?
Tactical field interrogator?
Yeah.
Well, it is a military intelligence MOS, military occupational specialty, and it entailed learning another language, and in my case, I learned Russian. Learning military terms, not exactly, your day-to-day conversational stuff. And, I used to say I knew more about how to take apart a tank by the time I was 22 in Russian than I knew about how to buy groceries at Wegmans. Right? So it was about... back in those days, it was after the Helsinki Agreement in the early 70s, and because there were so many ethnic Germans and ethnic Jews who were trapped behind the Iron Curtain, there was an agreement that a certain number of them would be allowed out, and in order to make it all work, they had to go back to where they had come from. So ethnic Jews went to Israel and then made their way into Western Europe. And ethnic Germans were allowed directly into, were brought directly into Germany. And we would see, because there's there's mandatory military service in the Soviet Union for all young men, we would get these guys out of refugee camps, basically. Not me, but there were people who did assessments and went down to refugee camps in Rome and Vienna, etc. And they would find people who had interesting information, young men actually, who had relatively recent service, and they would bring them up to our unit and other units that were around. But we were at the 18th MI Battalion in Munich, and we would house them, and every day I'd get up in the morning and I'd pick up my guy and I'd go to the office, and the Department of Defense had, or DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, whoever was following the case, would have a whole list of questions and about this unit or that unit, because all they could do is assemble this stuff, by hand. We didn't have satellites and all that kind of stuff. And I would, ask the guy the questions, whatever they wanted me to ask, and then I'd have to write up a report, and somebody would send it overnight telex back in those days. And then I'd come in the next morning and have another list of questions to follow up. So it was cool, it was cool until it was just me and the guy. And one day, there's so many cool experiences, but one day one of these guys takes out a lighter. I don't know what's a lighter. It looks like a gun. All right. I'm alone in my office with this guy. He pulls out this gun and pulls the trigger, and it's a lighter. I thought, man, this is all I need.
Right.
It was a cool job. It was very, very cool.
Wow, that's incredible. And we're going to talk more about it and your recognition, along with the recognition of the other female veteran on the trip, Nancy Smith, at the memorial. What's that noise?
Military Women's Memorial?
Yeah, no, I just heard a grumbling. But yes, the Military Women's Memorial, which you and Nancy Smith were recognized in, which is incredible. But before we get to that, John Peckham, you're alive. I'm so happy to see that. How are you holding up after that 36-hour whirlwind? For us, 36 hours, you, however many.
I had a hard time sleeping when we got back, but it was one of those things, nothing you can't handle. Your energy level sort of rises to the occasion, and you want to be there and make sure that you're providing the best experience for all the folks involved, watching over your crew, making sure they're doing what they need to do, watching over the guardians, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, and then just making sure that the veterans are enjoying their experience.
So here's what was remarkable to me is that for those who don't know, we were at the airport 4 a.m. We were in the air a little after 6 a.m. And then we were at the memorials that morning, and it was one memorial after another. And you would think there'd be stress attached to it, John, but there wasn't, because there were crew members of Honor Flight there along the way, hydrating you, feeding you, getting you off the bus, on the bus. Tell me about the number of people and the amount of work that goes into something like this.
Well, I'm glad it looked like there was no stress. I felt like it took me about an hour and a half to 2 hours before I had fallen into a comfort zone.
Yeah.
But no, we bring a crew of 18 to 19 people. We had a couple folks on this mission who it was their first time in a role, myself included. This was my first time as a trip leader. My mission safety leader, it was her first time as a mission safety leader. And then we had a couple of other crew positions. So everybody was sort of on their toes, making sure that they knew their jobs. We were all watching one another. And then it's just, how long are we going to stay at each memorial? How are we going to make sure that we stay on time? The only hard and fast on the mission itinerary is our appointment at the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington. You can't be late for that one, otherwise you're going to wait an hour.
Yeah.
So the entire day sort of is built around making sure you're on time for that event. And fortunately, the way the schedule worked out, we had our appointment at the Military Women's Memorial at 1:30, which that gave us an hour before our 2:30 Arlington gate check-in for a 3 o'clock at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and it all fell into place.
Yeah.
So two other honor flights that showed up at the Tomb of the Unknowns at the same time we did. We did a little bit of human juggling there for a few moments.
Yeah. No, that was pretty impressive. And Kathleen, as you saw, it was mainly Vietnam veterans. There's a couple, one or two Cold War veterans there. When I first started covering this in 2011, it was a lot of World War II. And then we've moved from there to Korea, to Cold War, to mainly Vietnam. What was it like for you to be on this trip? Why don't we start with this? What did you expect before you got there?
I expected... I don't even know what I expected. I expected to show up, and because essentially once you've served in the military, I knew, I didn't know how the extent to which it would be, orchestrated, but I knew it would run well because veterans know, because we have the experience, when this guy tells me what we're going to be doing next, I believe him, and that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so all those people who were staff members, it was so well orchestrated that it was amazing to me. Really, truly amazing. I kind of expected we'd have this whirlwind thing, and I thought it'd be more like herding cats, but it was not. It was, amazingly well run. And I have nothing but gratitude and admiration for how ththese guys pulled this off. Yeah. From the people at the airport when we left, people at the airport when we got back, and all the parts that came together. That's a big job to get done in 36 hours.
Yeah. No,
I wonder how many weeks, months of planning goes into those 36 hours.
John, you like to answer that?
Well, we know at the beginning of the year that we're going to be flying 3 spring missions, 3 fall missions. I think I was notified that I was going to be trip leader for 92 in July or August, which is when my planning for it started. I've flown a lot of missions, but this is the first time that I'd flown as the trip lead. It got intensive about 2 weeks before when I was developing the agenda for the crew meeting, developing the slide deck for the Guardian meeting, going through and learning about all the veterans from the paperwork that our health and safety folks maintain, learning about health problems, making sure that we can support anything medically on the mission that we have to, going through service notes, and learning about folks like you and the things that you did during your military service. And they're fun, for me, they're fun conversation points. There are a few people that I'm gonna make sure. I want to make sure I interface with everybody on the mission, but there are a few people, like we talked about your service. I'm like, I definitely want to hear more about that because it sounds like you had an amazing job. And then just getting those meetings done, pulling all the details together, and then being confident that that we've done this enough that all the pieces are going to fall into place once the ball starts rolling.
Yeah. And one of the places that we went to was the Military Women's Memorial. And because we had 2 female veterans, they were ready with, that had to be set up. They had 2 recognitions and they had your story, Kathleen, and it was read. What did you think about that event?
Well, first of all, when I wrote it, I didn't think it was going to go into something like that. Otherwise I would have been a little more careful. Because I'm the one that wrote raking straight lines in the sand.
Yeah, that's a good line.
Well, it is a good line because actually at the language school, we're all there. We're all taking language. It's all mixed branches. So there's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. There were Foreign Service officers. There were FBI types. There were CIA types. There were foreign officers. There's all kinds of people who have to learn language who go there. And being, after the language school was over, it's 47 weeks, we all go our separate ways. Some go to ASA, Army Security Agency. Some go to, back to their CIA, whatever it was. And we all go back to our branches. And I wound up going to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where the Intel school was. And I had some size to me at the time. It was before I shrunk. And at the time, I was 5'10". And I could be kind of a little bit scary, which I kind of liked. I cultivated that. It was important because it was important in the job.
Yeah.
And of all the people that went to school and then went out, kind of narrowed down to who went to the Intel school. And then from there, we got orders where we're going. And only 2 people wound up going to Germany, me and another guy.
Wow.
It was shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I
Especially at
said,
that time.
what are the rest of these people doing?
Yeah.
Well, they're at Fort Bragg raking straight lines in the sand, literally, or doing something really redundant, which is translating newspapers, which is kind of stupid because, they don't need translating. You can just read them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's I was very fortunate.
Yeah. And so to get that recognition within the Military Women's Memorial, what was that like for you?
It was kind of it was a little overwhelming. I was glad that Nancy was with me.
Yeah.
Because I could focus a little bit on her, which meant more to me because having all the focus on me was kind of intense.
Yeah, for sure.
It was intense, and it was humbling. It was I don't know. It was just weird. It was cool.
I thought the same. John, you were hustling and bustling, but I noticed you got emotional a few times during the trip. So I'm guessing you had some time to reflect, to observe that you didn't have to stay on point the entire time.
There's an awful lot of thought throughout the day, I guess, as you're going through. You're watching and how everyone's doing, how the mission is going. There's relief. There's thinking about the enormity of the situation as you're watching and seeing things like you talked about in your keynote address, the stuff that you saw at Vietnam, with folks who looked at the wall and recognized a name. There's an awful lot of, I get lots of opportunities in this role to talk to the veterans and find out things about them, hear their stories. And you get to reflect on that and how fortunate you are that someone is willing to open up and share their story with you. We had the medical situation that occurred, and so at the very end of the mission, the fact that I'd had to leave folks behind in Rochester until we could get them back on Monday, that was hard for me because I want to make sure that I bring down everybody who comes, or everyone we bring down comes back. So, and that's difficult for me. That's a little bit of you feel a little mission failure there. Yeah, and it's humbling when you realize that as much as you want everything to be in your control, not everything is under your control.
Yeah, and in a way, the ability to handle that, to me, is kind of mission success, if I may there, John. And the other thing that I was thinking about, too, is you and I had talked about the significance of the generosity, that this is not free to send people there. It's between,
Nope.
what, $700, $800?
It's when you factor everything in, the airfare, the buses, the hotels, all the meals, second lunch, like you said on Sunday.
Yeah.
But everything, yeah, it's an expensive. It's an expensive proposition that we wouldn't be able to do if it weren't for the generosity of the folks in the Rochester community and surrounding areas that make donations to us, that come out to our events where we've got an honor flight information table set up and maybe drop a donation in the jug. But if it weren't for the generosity of this community, it would be very difficult for us to have pulled off 92 missions.
Yeah, and speaking of 92 missions, we are going to be showing. Let me step back and say that the reason we went was not just for a joyride, although it was a joy. It's so we can cover this, and we're going to create a half-hour special for our Veterans Voices series in about a month or so, and up until then, we're going to release little blips of what we saw, which was very powerful. And as part of that, we're going to show a couple pieces from Mission 1, which News 8 was very fortunate to be on. There were only 10 people on Mission 1. And I was telling John, Kathleen, before the interview started, that one piece ends with a soundbite where one veteran says, "I hope more people get to do this."
Yeah.
And that was however many years ago.
You know, I wanted to say that one of the things that I really appreciated was the story about the Brownies, because coming back home and walking that line, that rope line, there were so many groups of Brownies, little, Brownies and Scouts, etc. And these little girls wearing their sashes with all the, I just thought about the guys who are the Brownies. And these little girls were cheering, and because there's no women vets here. So I stopped at several of these little groups, and I mentioned to them that their badges are like our badges, and they are badges of service, and that is service that they are doing, and it's very important, their service. And I think that especially little girls need to be held up and honored for the services they are doing, even though they're kids, because it kind of builds a foundation for service. Yeah. And these little girls beamed. They were just happy to, they're getting talked to, and someone's looking at their badges. Yep. It was very cool. The whole thing was great.
Well, and I have to say, I speak with a lot of people, but you hear it in sports a lot. Someone will see someone who's already done it, and it becomes a reality to them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just in sports. They'll see someone in a career and say, I hear this all the time. I didn't know that was possible. And that made me think, those little girls talking to you, that might be the first female veteran that they've ever spoken to, So
I think a lot of girls don't even realize that girls can be vets.
Yeah, no, so,
I didn't know.
One of the interesting things too, we talked a lot about it because there was a lot of Vietnam, the homecoming that wasn't after the war for a lot of these guys and gals when they came back. But one thing that I took away from the World War II sound bites that I listened to is, while they certainly didn't have the protest, there was no fanfare. They kind of just came home and just got to work. So they didn't have, a homecoming, so to speak,
Do you
either.
know
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because when people are drafted, they get a number, and then they're told when to show up.
Yeah.
And they didn't go over as units. I mean, World War II, they went over as units. They served as units. They came home as units. And they had decompression time on those long trips home. Vietnam vets didn't get that. They got plucked out of their life. You're going to, Fort Dix for training, wherever you're going. And then they go home on leave, whatever they're going to do. And then they have orders to go to Vietnam. They don't go as a unit. They went on Pan Am or TWA or whatever, and they landed in Da Nang. And at the time, Da Nang was the busiest airport in the world.
Wow.
And they landed there, and then they were sent off to replacement units. They didn't know anyone there. They didn't know anyone, and they basically, that's where the term line soldier comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever hear the term
No,
line soldier?
it's the first time.
You've heard it?
Mm-hmm.
So they would basically, in a unit, like a platoon or a company's like, I don't know how many people it is, I forgot. but everyone gets a line number.
Oh, I see.
So I have done a lot of reading, and I downloaded SITREPs, situation reports. Do you ever look at those? Those are very, very cool. Where some Radar O'Reilly guy is sitting there, 0000, taking over, and then all day long, all night long for 24 hours, records everything with these units. Well, there'll be a recording that, there was ambush and line number 7, 12, 19 KIA. We need 3 replacements. Go to the replacement unit, 1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Wow.
It's shocking. And then after 365 days, usually, because they know how exactly they're going to be there for a year, they're Tuesday, they're in heavy combat in a jungle. And Wednesday, they're flying back home. And Thursday, they're at their mother's kitchen table with Vietnam dirt in their fingernails still.
Wow.
And that's why the problem was, because there was no decompression. And there were many guys who landed in Oakland and were sleeping on the floor until they could get out processed.
Wow.
And I don't know that there are a lot of Americans who understand that.
No, I mean, that type of story, I had no idea. Yeah.
That's how they came and went, yeah.
And I guess that kind of helps to explain, John, why so many of them got emotional. Even in Baltimore, when they got off the plane and the folks waiting for their flights were clapping, because a lot of them just hadn't experienced anything like that before.
It's something that they're definitely unaccustomed to. And when we look at our Vietnam era vets, they definitely weren't accustomed to being cheered. They were used to when my dad's friend Mike, I was his guardian a few missions ago.
Yeah.
He did 3 tours as a Marine in Vietnam, and when he came home, just like you described, he got his orders, and they just pulled him out. They said, "Your stuff will catch up with you."
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to Guam and got yelled at by a gunny because he was still in his field utilities. "You can't be back here dressed like this. This is all I've got." And then went through San Francisco, where he was treated very poorly. And then he was home.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
But they definitely weren't used to being greeted and cheered and having a town crier ringing a bell and welcoming them to their location. And all the other fanfare that you see in the airport, just when our vets are getting off, just at the very beginning of the mission, before anything's even started, there are people cheering for them down there. It's wonderful how the mindset of the public has changed towards our military.
Yeah. Almost without hesitation. I think for those in the airport, it was a good thing, because it's one thing to say thank you for your service to an individual member of the military or a veteran. At the same time, to see it in a group like that, there was something different about it. I don't know, a different level of appreciation or perspective.
And you and Emily might have gone forward, but while we were gathering up, waiting to go out to the buses, we had the honor flight group from Cleveland standing right with us, and I was talking with some of the guys from Cleveland, and some of our vets were talking to the veterans from Cleveland, and then they moved out towards their buses, and we got all the rest of our vets squared away, and then we moved out towards the buses. But it was a fun little interaction to watch.
Yeah.
All these folks kind of did the same jobs. They're from different parts of the country, but everyone did the same jobs, and it was neat to see how everyone meshed together in those moments where we suddenly found ourselves together.
Yeah, that was cool how everyone kind of arrived, and then of course at the Tomb of the Unknowns. What a project. Kathleen, there are going to be people who watch this and say, "Oh, my stepdad or my uncle would want to do this," but they might be hesitant because for whatever reason. What would be your words to them?
My words to them is to do it anyway, because the residual good feelings that you get from having participated will last a lifetime. And the bond that happens between veterans is something that's really hard to describe. People in this country are so polarized right now, but that doesn't happen in the veteran community. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. We used to think, either I was raised in the military, and the only thing we knew is either you were wearing green or you were a civilian. That's all we knew. And that kind of thinking stays with you. Veterans have a bond that is really difficult to describe. And for me, being able to, do you know how many people at this, in our mission, ask me for my phone number and contact information? Not so I can do this, but because, my dad, this and this, and one of the guys was a pilot. And like stoic, man. Stoic. And I talked to him, and next day in the morning, Sunday morning, I see him in the elevator, and he has written out his name in perfect military writing.
Of course.
His name, his address, his email, all of his contact information all ready, and he handed it to me. He said, "Would you contact me when we get home?" I said,
There
"Absolutely."
Yeah.
Right. So there's a trust. There's a trust that's so important.
Yeah.
And I think that civilians really don't experience that. So anyone who is hesitant to go, know you're going to be around your brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I love that. Mission 92 continues. For those who do want to get involved or want to get a loved one involved, John, where should they go? What should they do?
Veteran, Guardian, and volunteer applications are all available at honorflightrochester.org. Again, we are flying veterans down to Washington, D.C. at no charge to the veteran. There is a donation requested for Guardians who are flying with the veterans. And the other thing is, when I talk about volunteering with the organization, we have so many things that we try and do over the course of the year that there aren't enough bodies to come out and staff all the things that we want to do, and some of these things are going to, say, the Purple Painted Lady Festival and staffing a table. Some of these things might be going down to the National Warplane Museum Geneseo Air Show in July and providing VIP level service to the veterans who are attending the air show. That's Honor Flight volunteers that do that every year. We have events all throughout the year that are helping to bring people in, make people aware of our mission and what we do, and if they want to donate for us, because having the money is probably, people would tell me that it's probably the first best thing. Dollars put veterans on aircraft.
Yep, simple. Yeah, what a way to make a difference. And I want to thank both of you for joining us and for allowing me and Emily to be on the trip. It really was an experience of a lifetime. We feel very privileged. So
we're glad you guys were there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it. And so not only thank you for coming in, but I also want to thank John, Kathleen, and the entire team for opening up and telling us their stories. Those stories will be told throughout the month of August and will culminate in that half-hour special. And I think it will be a remarkable, basically I'm going to take you on the trip. I'm going to start at 4:26 in the morning, and you're going to board the plane with us, and then you will leave the Rochester airport Sunday at 2:19 p.m. So it's going to be wonderful. So thank you so much for sticking with us throughout this interview. I've greatly enjoyed it, and tell your friends, family, all that about the Adam Interviews segment and the Rochester First app. We are going to continue to expand and mosey down this digital road, and we appreciate you traveling along with us. All right, take care, everyone.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.